My name is Stephen Rosenblum, and I am Director of Planned Gifts at the St. Louis Zoo. I have also been involved with the St. Louis Planned Giving Council for the past 10 years or so, and was around when we first got this program started. And basically the idea behind Will to Give was to sort of raise awareness throughout the community about bequest giving and how simple it is to do, how nearly every nonprofit should be doing it, why they should be doing it, and why it's important. So what Will to Give is basically just an educational program to educate your board about the importance of bequest giving and why they should be in that game. And so and it's run the gamut of really big, institutions like the local universities and hospitals who came to some of our early trainings, to smaller organizations that are struggling, some of them to keep the doors open, but hopefully this will help, get some solid foundation, let your board understand why it's so important to start a bequest program so that you can have more solid ground and continue on with your other fundraising efforts as well. So over the years, more than 200 teams of nonprofits and professional advisors have taken part in Will to Give, and they have then done their presentations to taking it out to their organizations plus others. I think there's been, at this point, thousands of presentations throughout the community. And we're finding that once you present this to your board or to an external organization, people really get it. And so the folks in the audience come back and say, yeah, I would be willing to consider doing a charitable bequest, for the nonprofit that we all work for, or that I sit on the board for, whatever it might be. So it's really sort of raised all boats, and we're happy that this has happened. It all got started about 6 years ago with the Gateway to Giving Committee, which was a group that was organized to study giving in the St. Louis community. And some of the things they uncovered were that St. Louis is a very generous community with the corporate world. St. Louis is a very generous community with individuals, but St. Louis lagged behind a little bit in charitable giving through bequests. So they commissioned a study right at the same time that they were doing their study. There was a big national study started by a guy named Paul Shervish out of Boston University on this huge wealth transfer. So how the baby boomers are transferring all their wealth to the next generation, or actually the World War I generation is transferring that wealth, and how to leverage some of that for charitable giving. And the numbers are just astounding. The amount of wealth created after the war, the amount of money that's going to be transferred, and how do you leverage that and get some of that to charities rather than just going to people's heirs, because it is really more than we've ever seen in the history of the United States. So the two of those ideas sort of melded together to try and figure out how do we raise bequest awareness in the St. Louis area. So we commissioned Paul Shervish, the Gateway to Giving Committee did, to do just a St. Louis study of what giving looked like here in St. Louis. And we found a couple of interesting things, and some of that we'll touch on later. But the biggest thing was that St. Louis was lagging behind in charitable bequest giving. Will to Give grew out of that. And what it is, how it works, is that we're going to train you, a nonprofit representative, along with hopefully somebody from your board or a professional advisor that will pair with you to do this program that we're going to, we'll do a sample one. We'll get into our mode of giving that presentation, so you'll see exactly what it should look like for you to then take back to your board and present to them and sort of educate them. So it's sort of a partnership between the nonprofits and professional advisors. And then who supports us? We have all these wonderful organizations listed on the slide behind us: Deaconess Foundation, Bank of America, St. Louis Planned Giving Council, United Way, and the Greater St. Louis Community Foundation, who have all partnered to make sure that this is a low-cost, great way to educate folks. So we thank them very much. So a lot of times there's some hesitancy with an organization that's young, that's getting started, or even an organization that's been around a while, to sort of add something else to their plate. People are nervous, oh, we're struggling just to keep the doors open, keep the lights on. We can't do any more. And so what we want to educate folks on is why it's so important to have bequest giving and how easy it is to do. So the reasons why nonprofits need charitable bequests are can help stabilize things. So investment markets can fluctuate greatly. People are giving in good times, not necessarily giving when the economy is down, but bequests are fluid. They are always coming in. If you can sort of raise awareness about that and get folks to start leaving your organization in their wills and trusts, people are always dying. That's the sort of the good news and the bad news, so that money will always be coming in. Second thing is that annual and major gifts, like I said, are affected by these these market fluctuations. So you'll see downtimes, in bad economic times, people may stop giving their, annual charitable gifts or cut back in giving that. And this is a way to sort of help stabilize that. The other point is that nonprofits like it because once you get in and build that relationship with somebody, people rarely change their minds about who is in their bequest plans, both with heirs, unless if they're leaving it to children, usually they're not going to get so ticked off that they take their kids out. It's the same with a charity. If you've done the right job, built that relationship with them, they're connected to you, and they're going to put you in their will, usually they leave you in there, and most times it becomes a bigger percentage if you keep that relationship up. And then planned gifts and bequests can be a consistent if you keep working it, keep marketing it, keep talking about it to your board and to your donors. It will be a consistent source of revenue for you. And then the second slide is why donors like charitable bequests. Well, again, investments can fluctuate. This is something they don't have to deal with. They put it in. They're not worried about losing money, about making that gift. It's there. It's they can change it if they want. It's very flexible. And it gives them the ultimate control over their gift. So they know that it's going somewhere. Usually the biggest gift they can make in their entire philanthropic career will be one at death. And so they know I'm leaving something to an organization that's extremely special to me. It's going to be the biggest gift I make, but I can change it if I want. I can make it bigger if I want. It's a really one of the most flexible gifts that a donor can make, and it's also very easy. And it gives them the satisfaction of knowing what they're doing. This gift is going to help sustain their giving that they've always done to your organization, and it will be giving in perpetuity if you guys invest it right and keep it. And then why advisors support charitable bequests. So for a nonprofit advisor, like some of the folks we have here today, it's the same thing. You can talk to your clients about this is a great way to give, a great way to leverage the wealth that you've accumulated without giving it during lifetime. You can give it after you're gone. You can grow it, you can change it, you can change the organizations that you're giving to, and it's a great way to get some tax benefits, legal benefits. It's really a wonderful way, flexible way. There's lots of different ways. What we're going to focus on here is solely bequest giving, solely anything that comes, and Tim will address this a little more later, but that comes upon death through either a will, trust, or some a designation through a beneficiary form. And then advisors who understand that, like somebody here mentioned, that they're geared towards nonprofit charitable giving. That's a great way. We find that the professional advisors who understand bequest giving and talk to their clients about it have a stronger relationship, a longer relationship with their clients, and they understand what, even if they deal with annual gifts and all that, they understand their clients' passions and their needs and get that better relationship with them. So it's sort of a win-win on all fronts. What is your role as presenter? Basically just to educate folks first about the wealth transfer, about why this is important to talk about now. Explain the benefits of bequest giving, what it is, how it works, some of the basic and simple ways to do it. And then impress that importance of leaving a bequest to a charity, a percentage, to the organizations that you love the most, and why that's so important. So today's training will give you that information that you need to meet these expectations and take it to your board. And we've found that folks who do this and follow it have had some real success. So again, the presentation you're going to give is, in a minute we're going to switch and like Lindsay said, put on that hat as presenters. So when you get in front of your board or boards, it'll go something like this: 5 minutes of welcome and telling a story, welcoming folks, whatever it is. Then 15 minutes about the initiative overview, about the wealth transfer, about why it's important to do this. Another 15 minutes on bequest giving that the professional advisor will give. And then we leave lots of time for questions, because typically after you've given this presentation, There will be board members who will have lots of questions. Why should we do this? Why is it important? Or, hey, I've already done this. I never thought to let you know. Or, how do I find out more? And that's usually the most productive time. So be sure, if you can, when you do these presentations to your board or your donor societies, wherever you're going to do it, to carve out some time. I know it's hard to get that in board meetings, but make sure you've got enough time to do this and then to have some questions afterwards. Where there's a will, there's a way. And so first, let me thank you guys all for coming. I'm glad we got some time here in front of the board to talk about why bequest giving is so important and educate our board on something that we feel as an institution is very important that we move forward with. So as you know, the St. Louis Zoo has always had a history of bequest giving. It has helped us to create some of our beautiful and wonderful exhibits. But only in the past few years have we created a true endowment, where we are putting all of our bequest gifts into this endowment. That money is being, saved and grown, and we're only spending the harvest on that each year. But that's the money that helps keep the zoo free, that helps us improve our exhibits, that helps us maintain our exhibits, and we're very proud that we created the St. Louis Zoo Endowment Trust to do all of this. We're also very proud that we've sort of ramped up our bequest giving marketing so that we can let folks know, if you leave a gift through your will, through your trust, through any life income gift, whatever it might be, we as the zoo are going to be good stewards of that. We're going to keep it, we're going to grow it, and we're going to make sure that it stays at our zoo and keeps the St. Louis Zoo America's #1 zoo. And we did this because we know that St. Louisans love the zoo. We know that they cherish it and that they want it to remain a free zoo, to remain one of the best zoos. And the bequest gifts that we've gotten over the past 6-7 years since we've created this have really helped us to do that. So we've grown our endowment from 0 to about 36 million. We want to continue to grow it, and we want you guys to think about, can you do something for the zoo? Can you leave a bequest, or do you know folks who can? And can you help us spread the word about it? That's the one slide that we do tell you that you can sort of change. So if we put your logo there, put a picture of a donor who's left a wonderful bequest, tell a special story about your organization that has transformed it and changed it. I actually, when I did do this presentation, we told one story about a donor who had wound up leaving over $1 million to the zoo. But we also focused on the endowment, which we were trying to build up at the time, and we did this a few years ago. So what is it? So what is this presentation? What is Will to Give? Will to Give is a program that was created right here in St. Louis in the community to educate the St. Louis community and the philanthropic community and the professional advisor community about bequest giving and about why it's so important and why our organization and other organizations need to do this. We have some wonderful partners who've helped make this program what it is and make it an affordable program. Deaconess Foundation, St. Louis Planned Giving Council, the Greater St. Louis Community Foundation, Bank of America, and United Way have all partnered with the Gateway Center for Giving to make this program available, and it has been extremely successful. It has been presented to hundreds of nonprofits have participated in it, doing thousands of presentations throughout the community since 2006, and we have seen and heard stories from folks who have taken part of this that it is changing their organizations. They are finding folks who are leaving bequests to them, and it's become very successful, and we're glad that we could take part in it. Why are bequests important? So first of all, what are bequests? A bequest really is anything that's left after death. And why are they important? It's a matter of getting our organization to have that long-term thinking and to get beyond sort of the annual giving. We're always going to have annual fundraising. We're always going to need that. That's always going to be the thing that keeps us going each year. But to have some extra cushion, to have that extra stability. So those charitable bequests help an organization that's struggling to keep the lights on, that's working hand to mouth, to have the luxury in some cases to know that there's money that's coming down the pipeline, that we're building up, that we know is going to be coming in future years. And that will allow us to have the flexibility and the security to know that we can maintain what we have, that we can build new projects, continue our educational programs and those kind of things. As most of you probably know, and all of those of you who are in the financial services industry understand, there is a huge wealth transfer happening in the United States right now. We're in the midst of it. It's going to be going on probably for the next 40 years as the greatest generation, as they're called in some studies, is passing away and leaving their wealth to the next generation. So it is the largest accumulation of wealth we've seen ever in the history of the world. It's now getting transferred to the next generation. And in the U.S., you can see the numbers. There's 300 million Americans. Only 42% of adults have a will, which is shocking. Everyone who owns really anything should have at least a simple will that tells everyone where that stuff is going to go. And of those 42% who have wills, only 8% of folks are leaving a charitable bequest, which is sort of shocking. So the 42% that have wills, most of them are leaving things to heirs, siblings, whoever it might be. But with only 8% of people leaving something to a charity, it's huge opportunity to educate folks and to change that number and increase that number. And the numbers are staggering as to how much wealth is being transferred. $40 trillion may be transferred from one generation to the next by 2050, and up to $6 trillion can be in will probably be in charitable bequests. If we take that down a notch and look at just what's going on in the St. Louis level, only 7% of St. Louisans have charitable bequests. So we're lagging behind the national average. While St. Louis is a very, very generous community as far as individual giving during lifetime and corporate and foundation giving, we lag behind. So I think we need to educate folks. And if we all start talking about it and spread the word to our friends and colleagues, we can help increase that number. But again, that 7% is a huge number. So when you think that $500 billion may be transferred between the generations just here in St. Louis, if we can leverage some of that for our institution, for the zoo, it would be tremendous. So the potential for charitable bequest giving is $93 billion or more. And if we can just carve out a little piece of that for the zoo, we have done our job. So what is a bequest? There's often this hesitancy to talk about bequest giving or planned giving because people are nervous that they don't know, they're going to say the wrong thing, they're not going to be able to talk to somebody about it, not going to be able to spread the word. Well, really, the simplest definition is a bequest is any asset that passes at a person's death. And Tim will talk in a few minutes about the more specifics on that, but that is the simplest thing. So a will or a trust are the two most common forms, and bequest giving, very easy. It's just anything that passes on death. A charitable bequest is anything that passes upon death to a qualified nonprofit, so to a charity. And that's what we're talking about. That's what we want to raise awareness about. And what I want to stress is that for the zoo, while we've always been in this game, we just recently really got into marketing it and talking about it, and we've seen already just in the past 5 years huge increases. We now know, we're talking to our donors about it. We're understanding more about the dollars that they're leaving, about the reasons that they're leaving it, and about what sort of vehicles they're doing it through. And so it's been a tremendous help to us. It's going to be a tremendous help to the organization, but it takes a little time. So creating a solid bedrock, a solid foundation of bequest giving is of utmost importance, especially to smaller organizations, folks that don't have the luxury like us here at the zoo of being able to have a huge donor base and talk to folks about it. But it's a big deal. So of all the planned gifts that come into organizations across the country, the numbers are usually 89%, 90%, 91% are through bequest, through a simple, hey, I'm leaving this upon my death to your organization. So while you'll sometimes hear about more sophisticated planned giving tools like charitable lead trusts and charitable remainder unit trusts and gift annuity programs, bequests are the bedrock of planned giving. And with this, I am going to turn it over to our expert, Tim Prosser with Caspic and Company, who will explain more about the actual details and different vehicles and different ways that you can leave a bequest. So, Tim, thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. And thanks to all the board members for having me here tonight and for being here with us. I'll just move Steve's notes a little bit. Thank you. I'm one of those folks, a native St. Louisan, who has loved the zoo for many years, and I'm very proud and pleased to be here with you today to talk about bequest giving. As Stephen said, I work for a company called Caspic & Company, where we manage planned giving programs for big charities like the zoo. My background is as an estate planning lawyer, and so I'm used to talking with folks about bequests of all types. Whenever I give a talk about bequests, I love to start with the slide that you see behind me. So this is a reminder that property passes. As Stephen said, when you die, your property's passing somewhere, and it's really up to you to control how it's passing. This slide is a nice reminder that different kinds of property pass in different ways. You might say, well, I have my will. I met with my lawyer and we drafted a will. Or you, as a board member, you're sort of an ambassador for the zoo as well. You may be speaking with your friends or peers about perhaps supporting the zoo, and they might say, well, I've got a will and that's got everything straightened out. Doesn't my will control everything? And the answer is no. Your will only controls disposition at death of property that you own in your sole name. Or if you live in a community property state, your share of your community property interest. But for the most part, your will is only going to say where property you hold in your sole name goes at death. And of course, property that passes under a will is subject to the probate process. That means that the will is filed in the local probate court, a personal representative is appointed, and then the court oversees disposition of that property. So it's a fairly lengthy, time-consuming process. It's a public process, can be a little bit expensive. There are other ways to pass property at death, and as you'll see on the slide behind us, I've really got three columns. On the left, we have the property that passes by will, so property that you own in your sole name through the probate process. But the middle section of the slide is an entire other category of property that does not pass by will. It does not go through the probate process. Here is property that passes by operation of law because of how it's titled. This is stuff that you're all very familiar with. Anything that a bank account is a great example, or an automobile, where your name and someone else's name is on the title. So if you're married, your home or your bank account might be in your name and the name of your spouse as joint tenants or as tenants in common. If it's a joint tenancy, upon the death of one of you, the first joint tenant to die, that account or car or whatever belongs to the surviving joint tenant. That happens automatically by operation of law. Doesn't go through the probate process. So a much easier way to pass something at death than through a will. Another example of this, you've probably seen this on bank accounts or automobiles again, is transfer on death or payable on death. Have you ever seen an account title that says TOD or POD? That essentially means that you own it during your life, but upon your death, it passes to whoever you've named TOD or POD. So again, that happens outside the probate process, and the will doesn't affect how that kind of property passes. So that's another way that property can pass by operation of law because of how it's titled. Then if we look to the far right of this slide, you'll see that there's yet another category of property that passes outside of probate. This is property that passes by contract or agreement. And for the most part, what we're talking about here are things that came with a beneficiary designation. So life insurance, probably the most familiar, or your IRA account, your 401k, your 403b, your retirement plan account. That has a beneficiary designation form. That's a contractual document. It says that that's where the property in that account passes at your death. Your will does not affect where that property in the 401k or the IRA goes at death. So, in summary, different kinds of property passes in different ways at death. Your will doesn't control everything, and when you're thinking about your own planning or the planning of your friends and colleagues, it's important to coordinate how all those different kinds of property are going to pass at death in order to achieve your goals, including your charitable goals. So, going to the next slide, just as we saw that different kinds of property passes in different ways at death, that means that there are different ways of making charitable bequests. And on this slide, we're doing kind of a survey of the ways to make charitable bequests from a really high level, starting with the very simple, straightforward, and then moving to the more exotic. Wills, as we know, something we're all familiar with. Your will is the document that, it's a standalone document that says where your property passes at death. Again, this is property you own in your sole name. To put together the will, you've met with an attorney. The attorney's drafted it. Typically, the will is done as part of a comprehensive estate plan that might involve durable powers of attorney, maybe a revocable trust. But so there's the will, but there are other ways, and of course a charity can be named as a beneficiary of your estate through a will, including the St. Louis Zoo. Another way, though, to leave a charitable bequest is to name charity as a beneficiary on a beneficiary designation form for a retirement plan account or a life insurance policy. And charity might be named as the primary beneficiary or as the contingent beneficiary to take only in the event that your primary beneficiary doesn't survive. Charity might also be named to receive the entire account or just a fraction or a percentage of it. But another way to leave a charitable bequest is through a beneficiary designation. It's not on the slide, but as I mentioned before, TOD, POD, transfer on death, payable on death designations on bank accounts and automobiles, etc. Also another way to involve charity in your estate plan. And in Missouri, we have the unique situation of being able essentially to do a TOD with real estate. It's called a beneficiary deed. It's unique. Other states don't have this, but in Missouri, you're able to leave real estate to charity or to another individual outside of probate by using something called a beneficiary deed, which is a deed that essentially takes effect upon your death. You continue to own the property during your life, but upon your death, the property automatically passes outside of probate to the person that you've named in the beneficiary deed. So something that you should keep in mind for real estate in Missouri. And then finally, Stephen mentioned before, there are other kinds of plan gifts that are a little bit beyond the scope of this presentation, ways in which charity can benefit upon your death while you retain an income interest during life, charitable remainder trusts, charitable gift annuities, things that you, if you're interested in, you'd want to speak with someone like Stephen in the plan giving office at the zoo or with your own professional advisor. But a lot of different ways to leave property to charity upon your death. Now, despite the fact that charitable bequests do so much good for the zoo, and despite the fact that they are fairly easy to make, occasionally there are still objections raised, or at least concerns raised by potential donors. And I've shown us some of those concerns here on the slide. A donor might say, or you might say, you know, I'm not sure I can make a gift like this to the zoo because really I might need the money. Or what about my family? I mean, upon my death, that's really who I need to take care of is my family. Or, you know, I'm just not rich enough. My gift is not going to make a big difference. I'm not going to be able to leave a gift to build a big building at the zoo. So maybe this isn't really for me. Or, gosh, it seems pretty complicated. This is probably too difficult. I don't really want to go forward with a bequest. It seems like too much work. That's a common concern. Or, of course, there's procrastination. This is one of my own faults. I'll do it later. You always think there's going to be time to attend to it later. Well, let's just take a quick look at each of these concerns one at a time and see how we might address those. So, common concern number one, I'll need the money. Well, remember, what we're talking about are bequest gifts. These are gifts that don't take effect until death. So naming a beneficiary on a beneficiary designation form, naming a charity under your will or your revocable trust, none of that does anything to affect your ability to access that property while you're alive. So we're not talking about making gifts that take something out of your pocket today. What we're talking about is arranging your affairs so that charity can benefit upon death. So a bequest gift doesn't interfere with your ability to access that property or that account during life. So if you need the money, you're fine with a bequest gift. Common objection number two, what about my family? Really, they will need the money in this account, or they will need this property. Well, as I mentioned before in talking about beneficiary designations, it's possible to leave property both to individuals and to charity at death. Perhaps by naming an individual to receive the property first, the primary beneficiary on a retirement account, and charity as the contingent beneficiary, only to receive in the event that that individual doesn't survive you. That's one way to address it. Another way to address it is on the primary beneficiary designation line to name an individual to receive a percentage of the account and charity to receive a percentage of the account. So your spouse or your child to receive 50% or 60% and the zoo to receive 50% or 40%, whatever designation makes the most sense in your situation. So entirely possible to take care of both individuals and charity through a bequest. Another common objection, you know, I'm not rich enough. My gift's not going to make a big enough difference. Well, as Stephen mentioned before, a bequest program is the bedrock of a good plan giving program. And most bequests are not very large. The average size bequest is under $20,000. These, though, are the bread and butter of charities. This is the bedrock of a good plan giving program, are a steady stream of small, moderate-sized bequests. And your gift will make a difference and will add to the endowment at the zoo, for example, and will be very appreciated by the charity of your choice. So just the fact that you're not Bill Gates doesn't mean that you shouldn't be considering a bequest gift. Common objection number 4, this is just too difficult. Well, I hope that Stephen and I have both made it clear that bequest giving really isn't difficult. That's part of the beauty of a bequest gift, is that it's easy when you're having your will drawn up to say, you know what, I'd like the zoo to receive a percentage of my estate. It's very easy when you're looking at your IRA beneficiary designation to say, you know what, the zoo is going to be the contingent beneficiary of my IRA. That's a very easy thing to do, and it wasn't expensive to do, and it wasn't difficult. So hopefully with a little reflection, people will see that a bequest gift is really something that's quite easy to set up to benefit charity. Common objection number 5, I'll do it later. There's always going to be time for this. Well, eventually there's not time for this. And it's best to strike while the iron is hot. If you're inspired to make this sort of a gift, this is the time to pick up the telephone, call the attorney, or to get on the internet and go to the website of your IRA custodian, request a beneficiary designation form. Fill it out. Just do it while it's on your mind, because we never know when it's too late to make these sorts of gifts. Well, I hope that addressing those common objections has been helpful. What I'd like to do now is back up a little bit and talk more generally about how a bequest gift can benefit the donor. We know how a bequest gift will benefit the zoo, provides resources for the zoo to run its programs, but bequest gifts also benefit the donor. First of all, as Stephen mentioned before, bequest gifts are revocable. They're revocable. So I can put the zoo or another charity on my beneficiary designation today for a certain percentage, but if 2 or 3 or 5 years from now I change my mind, and let's say I want to give the zoo a little bit bigger gift, it's easy to do. Nothing's been set in stone. As long as I'm alive, I can change that beneficiary designation form. It doesn't take effect until I've died. Bequest gifts are also very flexible. As we've seen, there's a lot of different ways to make a bequest gift: under the will, under the revocable trust, by the way an account is titled, with the beneficiary designation. Lots of different ways to make bequest gifts to charity. The ways to make those gifts depend upon the type of property that's being given, but there's a lot of flexibility there. Bequest gifts, as we've seen, can be very simple and straightforward, inexpensive. Sure, you're going to pay an attorney to help you put together a comprehensive estate plan. There'll be some money involved there, but for the most part, bequest gifts are things that you can do with no expense to yourself, just by changing the way a bank account is titled, changing the way a car is titled, changing the beneficiary designation on a life insurance policy or a retirement plan account. And the fact that these gifts are revocable and so easily changed makes them very comfortable for people who say, you know what, I might need that money still. I don't know what the future holds for me. Well, a bequest gift is a very comfortable way to leave something to the zoo, because that gift isn't going to take effect until upon your death, when you no longer need the assets. We haven't really talked about this yet, but bequest gifts can also be tax effective in terms of estate tax. There's an unlimited estate tax charitable deduction for property left to charity at death. And even in terms of income tax. We're talking about bequest gifts that take effect at death, so you'd say, why is there an income tax benefit? Well, if you choose the type of property that's left to charity, you can actually save income taxes for your other heirs. Retirement assets that carry out taxable income to the recipient, if those are left to charity, well, the zoo and other charities are income tax exempt. So no income tax will be paid on those assets, and different assets that have a better tax treatment can be left to individual beneficiaries. So income taxes can be saved as well as estate taxes. And then finally, and maybe this goes without saying, but it shouldn't, a bequest gift allows you to leave a legacy, to tell your family and your friends and the zoo how much this institution means to you. It allows you to set that up in perpetuity. Here are some questions that a donor might ask himself or herself in helping to structure a charitable bequest. First of all, when you're thinking about your charitable bequest, what do you want to accomplish through your gift? Is there a particular program here at the zoo that you would like to benefit? you should speak with Stephen about that, and he'll give you exactly the wording to use in your will or other document to make sure that that program benefits. How much do you wish to give, and do you want the charity to be able to use the gift in a particular way? Do you want to put some restrictions on the gift? Again, a gift agreement is something that you can work out with the zoo ahead of time as part of your bequest. When do you want to give? Do you want the assets to be distributed all at once, or do you want the assets to be doled out over time? Different ways that you can arrange your affairs to accomplish those goals. And do you want to remain anonymous, or would you like to be recognized today? Recognition is not a selfish thing in the sense that it might inspire others to follow suit and make the gift as well. I know when that alumni magazine arrives on my doorstep, or when the St. Louis Zoo magazine arrives and I open it up and I see who else has been giving, it makes me think, maybe I should be doing that too. So being anonymous is terrific, but sometimes allowing yourself to be thanked is a great way to help others see themselves making gifts to the zoo. We do say that it's a good idea to involve your family and those closest to you. At least let them know what your thoughts are in terms of a gift to the zoo. Let them know how important the zoo has been to you in your life, and how, as part of your estate plan, you do want to recognize the zoo. Yes, the family will be remembered, but not everything is going to the family. The zoo is very important to you. Let the family know ahead of time so there's not a surprise. And who knows, they may really support you and follow your example. Consulting with your professional advisors, of course, is very, very important, because what we're talking about are gifts that, while very straightforward, do have important tax implications, and it's important to work with your professional advisor to make sure that your affairs are arranged in the way that benefits you the most and benefits the zoo the most. And some steps to get organized. Among your materials today, we have our will guide. It used to be called the will writing guide. It's called Organizing Your Estate today. This is a terrific brochure. I'll hold it up here in case you haven't found it in your materials yet. The Organizing Your Estate document really does help you prepare to put together your own estate plan. Gives you an opportunity to review and list out what your assets are, to think about your own desires and concerns for where you'd like property to pass at death, and to document your intentions for your assets. So it's a great way to kind of get started. And it will save you a lot of time if you go through the will writing guide or the Organizing Your Estate guide and fill that out before you meet with your attorney to begin the estate planning process. It will answer a lot of the questions that he or she will be asking you anyway. Okay, wrapping up this section of the presentation, I'm showing you again that first slide that we looked at. This is the reminder that different kinds of property passes in different ways, and we've added a little box at the bottom of each column that essentially gives you the step-by-step way to start to leave a gift to charity of that kind of asset. So property that's passing by will or by intestacy, remember, if you want it to pass to charity, it's got to be named in the will. If it's property that you own in your sole name and you want it to go to charity and you die without a will, well, the laws of Missouri will say where that property goes, and believe me, that's going to be to your nearest relatives. It's not going to be to the zoo or to any other charity. So if it's property you own in your sole name and you want it to go to charity, it's got to be stated in your will. And of course, to put together a will, you're best advised to consult a lawyer. There are other kinds of property that don't pass by the will, as we said before. So this whole middle column, property that passes by the way it's titled, by operation of law, the steps here are to review the way your property's titled. It may be a little while since you've looked at a particular bank account or an automobile, and you might say, gosh, is that in my name alone, or is that titled jointly? Is there perhaps a TOD, a transfer on death, or POD beneficiary I would like to add? If it's real estate, might I want to work with my lawyer to put together a beneficiary deed to have that property pass outside of probate to charity upon my death? And then finally, property that passes by agreement or contract. Remember, this is life insurance, it's retirement plan accounts. Take a look at those beneficiary designations. You may be surprised at how you filled those out. Your first day on the job many years ago when you filled out your 401k beneficiary designation, the way you filled it out then might not be the way you want it filled out today. So looking at beneficiary designations is a great opportunity to add charity as a beneficiary upon your death. Well, thanks again for having me here today. I hope this has been a helpful discussion, and I will be around after the meeting to talk with you further and answer questions. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Stephen.
Thanks, Tim. That was very helpful, and I hope that you guys all learned a little bit about the ways to give, and will consider that and help us spread the word about it. And I think that concludes our presentation. So if we have any questions from the board, feel free to ask them now, or Tim and I will be around afterwards to talk to you, or talk to anyone in our development office if you sit and think about it. But we would encourage you to really start thinking about this, not just for the St. Louis Zoo, but for any organization that you feel strongly about, as well as sort of revisiting your estate plans just to think about them in general. Or do you have the right beneficiaries? Are things going to the right relatives and to the right charities at this point? So thank you guys again. We appreciate you letting us have this time during the board meeting. So now we're taking off our hats. That is the basic presentation, and hopefully you guys, you get all those materials. You get all of this with this program, and hopefully you can find somebody on your board who is an expert in estate planning or knows about wealth transfer as a wealth advisor. So look through your donor rolls, look through your board list, and see who might be the best person to do that. If you've brought them here today, that's probably the ideal person. If not, you can call Lindsay or Mary, and they will help partner you with some folks that we have that can help do that. And we've gotten folks who've done that partnership and then gotten involved with the organization. So it sort of works on several levels if you want to do that. Now let's move on to some of what are the logistics. How do you get this done? It's some great ideas. Get in front of your board, and I can tell you that it works. We have, you're probably a little dubious, like, oh, the zoo, they've got lots of money, they're able to raise money, you've got a plan-giving person. Well, I'll tell you, as soon as we did this presentation to the board, and I did it not just to our big board, we did it to the Board of Trustees and then our Zoo Friends Board. I also did it to my Plan-Giving Advisory Committee and to our Endowment Trust Board. So I did it 4 times. Every single time somebody came up afterwards and said, yeah, you know what, either I have the zoo in my plans, I never thought to tell you, or yeah, I would really consider doing that, let's talk some more. So it does sort of get that message across subtly to your board that, yeah, let's start doing it, and we're getting in the game, and we should start thinking about it. In fact, the first time I did it, the president of our association came up to me afterwards and said, I never thought to tell you, but my wife and I have the zoo in our estate plans. And I was thinking, you never thought to tell us. We mail all the time. We have all these beautiful brochures that go out, but really getting in front of folks really sort of puts it right front of mind, and it gets them to think about it. And I just recently did this again. We thought maybe it was time to redo it, and I got up and did a little plug, a mini version of this, and the woman who is now the president of our zoo association came up afterwards and said the same thing. Yeah, we've got the zoo in our plans. I never thought to tell you. So you never know. It really does work. Logistics. You got to do, we ask that you do an internal presentation. That's really what this is all about, so that you go back to task, you go back to neighborhood houses, and you talk to your board. So if you've got monthly board meetings, quarterly board meetings, whatever it is, look ahead, look at the schedule and see, can I carve out a half an hour, whatever it, the most time that you can get in front of the board to talk about this. And really talk to your president and CEO, talk to your development people, and figure out what's the best way. How are we going to get this message across, and how is it going to be most powerful to them, so that we can start moving into this game. And like Tim has mentioned, I've said, it doesn't take much to do it, and it doesn't take much to just start we're not talking about starting a whole plan giving program, just starting a bequest program. Just saying, hey, we're in the game, we're talking to you about bequests, we can give you recognition for bequests, we will accept your bequest upon your death, and if you're not asking, you're not going to get them. So we ask that you do this internal presentation. Give it to, once to your board, give it several times internally. If you've got a giving society that meets regularly, your biggest donors, make it a special presentation for them. If there's several ways you can do it, we ask that you do it internally. Then we ask that you do an external presentation. So when I initially did this, I did it to another board that I sit on another charity that I sit on the board of, the Crown Center, which is low-income housing for seniors in University City. They created a bequest society as a result of this, and we, I think, have 12 folks who have already told us, mostly former board members or families of residents who've let us know about it. So we do an external presentation. We ask that you try and do that, and that can be to a Rotary Club, a book club, senior citizen center, whatever it might be. If there's a group that you're affiliated with or you think might be a good one to do that, go ahead and do that. And then the graphics, we ask you that you keep those the same, that you run through the program like we did. You can change, add your logo, tell one of your stories. But other than that, we want to keep it, a consistent message across the community. There are lots of resources to finding out more, digging a little deeper. Lindsay and Mary are great resources. There's folks from our St. Louis Plan Giving Council who'd be happy to help you. The best place to go would be to the www.centerforgiving.org website to learn a little bit more, or the slpgc.org website, the St. Louis Plan Giving Council website, which will have some tips on there as well. And then the logistics are up to you. So now we're putting the burden on you guys to figure out the location and the time. And so the best way to do it is if you've got a board meeting coming up and you can build in a little time or make it a special presentation. I've talked to some folks who did it before a board meeting or did it as a special summer session for a board meeting. If you have, there was one organization I was involved in that always has a special summer program in addition to their board meetings. And so we did this whole presentation there and then had a whole topic afterward discussion about bequest giving. So, and then you've got the literature, but think about it. Think about the time and the place that you want to do it, and you've got all the stuff ready. And then we ask that you guys do the evaluation. So the reason we found out that this is really a program that we've wanted to continue for the past 5 years is because we've gotten great evaluations back. So when you do it, we ask that you take time at the end to ask them to evaluate the presenter and to ask them to evaluate the presentation. And that gives the folks here at Gateway Center for Giving the feedback that they need to see, is this still working? Are there people still doing it? Is it functioning well? Is it a worthwhile program, which we definitely think it is. And that's the only way that we're going to find that out. So make sure that you keep the evaluation portion a part of it. And then who has participated? You may, your board may be, a little, why should we do this? Has people really done it? This is a very short, partial list of it, but lots and lots of folks throughout the community, big organizations, smaller organizations. Like we said, there's been hundreds of nonprofits that have done this, and nearly every major group that deals with wealth planning and financial advising has taken part. So you're not alone. You're not jumping out alone on this one, and we appreciate everyone who's been on board for the program.